It's a big Monday. We've got two tech stories kind of leading the week. One, we have Facebook's IPO. Looks like it's coming down the pike. And the second is that Apple surpassed Exxon in terms of market value. We're going to talk, Richard Beals and I are going to talk about sort of how these two things intertwine. We'll start with Facebook.
Right.
We're sort of wondering whether there's
So here's the
left.
thing, right? Supposedly they may file for the IPO for the first version of the prospectus this week. But it's already quite an old company in tech terms. Its valuation
it's had
huge.
a different trajectory.
Right, its valuation is huge. The Google probably equivalent would have been for it to go public, I don't know, 2 years ago.
Right.
When the valuation was maybe a quarter of what it is
right,
now.
Right.
So what you have is all these people who've invested along the way at all these different valuations.
Sort of a who's who, really, of, billionaires.
Even Microsoft, the company.
Microsoft, which notorious for bad investments, appears to have
also
found a good one.
Also some, Yuri Milner, Russian billionaire.
Li Ka-shing.
Yeah.
We've had, and of course, all the Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel. All these guys have made pretty hefty returns along the way.
So here's the point. The talk of the valuation hasn't gone up much lately. For the last couple of years, until a few months back, it was going up, tens of billions every 3 months. Now it's kind of been stuck. It kind of feels like they're selling to the public at the top.
Right, which is sort of, they're saying, these are kind of wild numbers, but it looks like somewhere 80 to 100 billion.
Right.
At $100 billion, it's hard to see where somebody who buys into the IPO has any more juice to get out of this.
So Google today is worth 7 times a share in Google is worth 7 times what it was.
What it was when it floated in 2004.
Now, if Facebook is going to if Facebook is going to do the same for the people who buy in at the IPO, it's going to have to be a few years down the pike a $700 billion company, and nobody seems to be able to, as we'll talk about in a second with Apple, nobody seems to be able to get past the 400.
Well, right. So now, why don't we move there? Because Apple and Exxon are now jockeying. Apple's on Friday went ahead, but they're as the biggest company at around a little over 420 billion. Now, while everyone's focused on the growth at Facebook, what the IPO means, how much juice is left. We actually think Apple's kind of on this trajectory.
So Apple's revenue's growing 70%
70%.
a year. And it's a huge company, but it's still growing that fast. Its margins are 45%. Products seem to be great, and it has $100 billion of cash on its balance.
So it could buy Facebook before it even floated.
Buy Facebook before it even floats. But here's the point. It trades on a lower earnings multiple than the average S&P company, and the average S&P company is probably growing at, I don't know, 5 to 10% a year.
Right.
So we think Apple is totally undervalued by the market, and there are a couple of reasons. One is this sort of large number idea. It's really hard to grasp the idea.
Once companies reach a certain size, people start to worry. How is it even?
You kind of can't believe it's still growing at the speed of a startup, even though it is.
Right.
And the other issue is they have this $100 billion of cash. They haven't given anything to shareholders. I know. The piece we got coming out today is sort of talking about, well, if you start giving cash to shareholders, they may start figuring out that it's a much more valuable company than they think right now.
Right. So actually, if you sort of throw all these things on top of Apple, the growth, the dividend, these kinds of things, it's actually potentially on this trajectory to 700 billion, maybe even beyond.
Right. We like the conceit of $1 trillion company. I don't know if it'll get there, but you could certainly break that $500 billion barrier.
It certainly looks more realistic than Facebook getting there anytime soon, at least for the numbers we have right now. All right, we'll leave it there. We'll keep an eye out for the next $1 trillion company and be back with more Breaking Views tomorrow.